Joined with Ryan Foss-Skitesvik. He is an entrepreneur with a background in finance and M&A investment banking. It was through dealing art early in his career that he developed an enthusiasm for alternative investments. Following his years in finance, Ryan became co-founder and chief operating officer of a real estate technology company, Wallplay, in 2018. Ryan founded Shift Ventures with the goal of working with entrepreneurs at the earliest stage of their businesses in an effort to promote sustainable growth in operating infrastructure. His life's purpose is to help others, which he carries into everything he does. He is an active philanthropist, currently sitting on the board of the Betty Fleiss Foundation, which supports STEM education and aviation scholarships. Ryan enjoys spending his free time with his family and their dogs in Westport, Connecticut, while watching English Premier League soccer every single weekend. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Hey, Bobbi, I'm great. Thanks for the extended intro. It's quite the list. How are you?
Good. You've had your life sort of right now. You've got hands in all sorts of fires, which is super interesting. And as a creative and entrepreneur, I feel the same way at different points of life. Like sometimes you've got a million balls juggling in the air and you're like, I'm just going to try to keep all of them going and see which one lands. But honestly, like you've got them all going and they all seem to be super successful right at the moment. So, and I'm sure it's going to carry through for a while. So what's been new in your world lately?
Many things. I think, certainly COVID has changed the world we live in. And so I think I've tried to, like many, to make the most of an uncomfortable and bit of a difficult time. I think when some doors close, others doors open. And so it's been a time where I've actually been out of New York City and getting to spend some time with family and be a brother and a son, which has been a great opportunity to spend with family that we wouldn't otherwise have had. And then it's also been an opportunity to start new businesses. So I feel like, staying busy has really kept me moving and shaking during this time. And I certainly don't do any of the things I'm doing alone. So it's been great to be able to work from home and collaborate with so many people who are enthusiastic about building new things.
And that is so key. What's been one of the biggest parts of collaborating with others? Like, have you seen the growth exponentially grow over this time period that if you were doing these new ventures on your own, it wouldn't have seen the same trajectory of where you're at today?
Well, I think that many people have been looking for new opportunities the same way that, I've been thinking about starting new businesses over the last, 6 months. And across the board, whether, they're interns I work with, to advisors, to venture partners, to operating partners, to partners in other businesses, I think there's a genuine enthusiasm for building new things and new opportunities, given that a lot of life was interrupted. And now that people are home, most people have a little more time on their hands. Maybe they're not commuting. Maybe they're they've got extra time and they're looking to jump into something. Or, for many of my analysts, for example, opportunities they had for other work or other internships fell through. So they have a genuine enthusiasm to jump into something that's growing. And I think it's, I really commend the human spirit during this time to sort of like push through and like find ways to create new things in uncertain times. And that's been exciting. So I think it sort of lends itself to, working with good humans who are making the best of an uncomfortable year.
And that is so key of, you got to be resilient and you can't let one setback to sort of hinder your growth and keep you in this hole of negativity of saying, this is the end, 2020 has been awful. But you flipped the script, you've turned it around. Now with Shift Ventures, you guys actually have a mental health company that you're working with during
Yeah,
this time.
super excited about these two women who have founded Mental Health Global Network, which is a uh, B2B SaaS platform that facilitates a corporate compliance training tool on mental health intervention and peer-to-peer support. So much like we have sexual harassment training or drug and alcohol training in our universities and companies, they've developed a mental health platform to train employees and university students on peer-to-peer support. And so, mental health was a crisis before the pandemic, and now more than ever, I think it's so important to really drive a conversation in mental health, advocacy, and certainly building businesses in the mental health space is something I'm passionate about, and I couldn't be more excited about what they're doing.
And the mental health aspect is so key. It was, like you said, a problem pre-COVID, and it was one of those things that the world just didn't talk about. Like we knew it existed, but we just covered it up like, oh, it'll be okay. Like
Right,
just
right.
hold it in the background. Don't express your feelings and just let's keep doing life as normal. But now, since the pandemic has hit, it's come to fruition that, we have to start talking about these things.
Totally.
And if we don't talk about it, it's going to even create a larger problem down the road. With the response of companies and so forth going out of the Mental Health Global Network, have you guys seen a good response from companies willing to take this on? Or
Yeah, I mean, they've seen a lot of early traction, and they were earlier in the year, they were doing in-person trainings, and then they moved online to physical trainings on Zoom. And then, you know, they were sort of inspired to build, this sort of software platform so that they could reach more people, at a much faster pace. And so there's been great interest, not only from universities across the country and companies across the country, both government agencies and institutions to, Ivy League to state universities. But now we're signing people up for the beta of the software platform that'll launch in the spring. And they've seen a lot of traction from early stage investors excited about the mental health space. So they're currently raising a round of funding, and they're about halfway through it. And so I think that the impact they can have and the faster they can get out to market, the better.
that's amazing. And I know for sure that's just one piece of the puzzle that you're working on. With Shift Ventures, like what is your role for these companies and what type of companies do you focus on working with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think on our website we say, if a VC tells you you're too early, we want to work with you. And so I think, what's been compelling about our value proposition is that we like to come in early as an operating partner, offering outsourced CFO work or operating work or, outsourced CMO and marketing team structures to invest those teams early on, as human capital. And, we found that many founders become too top heavy too quickly, or they end up bringing on full management teams from day one or multiple co-founders from day one. And by the time they actually raise their first or second round of funding, they end up with less than 50% of their own company. So by investing human capital early on, we can create a stronger foundation with sort of leveraged and experienced teams that really provides capital efficiency for them, as well as the confidence for early stage investors who are concerned with execution and oftentimes the team at an early stage. So I think for us, we're investing anywhere from 100 to $200,000 of human capital in a pre-seed sort of round. We want to be the first sort of institutional partner early on and help fill in those operating gaps. And so we often also help sort of syndicate and help these companies raise their first round of funding. So we work with a really diverse group of founders, as well as underserved founders, and certainly I'm excited about being able to reach founders anywhere. So some of our founders are here local in New York, they're in Atlanta, they're in Miami, or even Philadelphia. So I think even the pandemic, and on an institutional sort of scale, has allowed us to reach more entrepreneurs. And I think the interesting investment thesis we're also looking at is not only will early stage companies have some operating gaps to fill, but I'm also working with a performance coach who is has a PhD in counseling and is a psychologist, and we're looking at helping early stage founders build esteem, confidence, traction through avoiding emotional decision making, and looking at early stressors of starting a new company, especially for first time founders. So performance coaching has been a really interesting category and value proposition to our early stage founders.
Yeah, I've never heard of a venture company offering performance coaching, but if you think about it, like, it's so key. You can
It's one of the biggest risks to try to mitigate, not only as an investor but as a founder. I think that even myself as a founder, and in my last business, I think it would have been really interesting to see our progress had we had sort of a third party in the room in our management team discussions, in our board discussions, in our investor meetings, and I think if you can get real clear on communication and early on, I think you really can set an unbreakable foundation.
And communication is key, not only in business, but in relationships and friendships. And if you don't have that, and if you're not comfortable communicating, then there's all sorts of breaking points that can happen and trickle down.
Well, I think that, and that's the human component. I think we're all human and we all respond to stress or situations in different ways. Some of us get loud, some of us get quiet, some of us, I think, struggle to find our voice, whether you're an employee or you're an executive or a founder. I think finding your voice in early stage companies is so important. And so being able to develop those skills in a clinical way, I think, is a really compelling value proposition, because there are so many breakdowns, and certainly, the culture of, you want to set the culture from day one. And so I'm super excited about building companies with that in mind.
And you're sort of shifting the weight off of the founder's shoulders, and in essence, coming in, helping offer, the CMO, the CEO, the CFO roles, and saying, like, focus on founding the company and getting things right. I'll help bring in the team that I know that can support you, and let's hit the ground running, instead of this mode of startup life of, like, I got to find the right CMO, and I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, but
even the right co-founder. It's so overwhelming to I think most founders feel like they're really giving up a piece of their dream, and so it's a very serious proposition for VCs to ask founders to find a co-founder, or I think oftentimes, and again, what comes in with that performance and communication element is that the biggest risks is also early employees or co-founders walking away from the business in the first couple of years. And so I think, we generally like to work with founders, where we can also help them better understand the roles they need to hire for by working with experienced operating partners across the board in every category. So it's also an effort to really help them qualify and negotiate those hiring plans while also, increasing speed to market with whatever they're building.
And then how long do you stay in sort of like this incubation period with a company? Like, are you starting out and then do you go for a few years or when they hit a certain growth point?
Yeah,
Or,
good question. So we really focus on getting, um, companies from zero to their pre-seed round of funding, or from their pre-seed round of funding to their seed stage. So typically, um, when we jump into an idea or a company, whether it's pre-revenue, pre-product, whether they have revenue, whether they've raised money before, we look to fill the gaps, and our term sheets are typically on a 12-month basis. But because each of our operating partners are also running sort of outside agencies that fill those positions, whether it's a CMO or our CFO, we have a fractional CFO company where, startups we work with, once they sort of, let's say graduate that 12-month term sheet, and our equity position sort of is vested, or um, they can continue to work with our CFO, our fractional CFO team. They can continue to work with our performance coach. They can continue to work with our marketing team. They can continue to work with that operating partner or a handful of our advisors on a direct basis. And I think that's really where we lay the foundation to qualify those relationships from day one, and work with entrepreneurs where we have skin in the game, and we're really in it for the long haul with them. So it's super important for us to be able to really acknowledge that we're partnering with them, and we're not a typical agency sort of just taking fees and running off. So I think being invested for the long term has been really important for our founders to feel strong in our relationship, and having a venture capital firm on the cap table really early on gives other investors and future employees confidence.
for sure, that they can get that next round of funding that they need. And like you said, it's like both parties in it, and it sort of offers accountability in a sense for the founders too. Like,
Totally.
I've got another uh, company that's partnering with me and taking me under their wing, and I have to get this done.
Totally.
Whereas,
Well, I think we want to sort of elevate that idea of accountability to, whether it's allied control or just, being what allows them to do what they do best, whatever sort of category that is. And I think the other interesting value proposition that we've seen is that when we get involved, there are a handful of VCs that will ask young founders who may still be university students to drop out. But having us as an operating partner involved at an early stage has actually been able to allow founders to stay in school, knowing that as they build the vision for the company, there is a venture partner involved, helping them operate and execute, and has given them sort of the bandwidth to finish out their senior year, for example, or whatever the case may be. So I think having a venture builder and an operating partner involved for founders that are completing their degrees has also been really compelling. So, you know, one of our portfolio companies, Claris, the CEO, he's a senior at Wharton, and getting involved is something we could feel excited about. Supporting him while he's managing a full course load as well as building this company. So I think that's an example of where we can add value early on, regardless of where you are in life as an entrepreneur. I think that's something we're excited about as well.
And that's incredible because so many times, like, people out there listening are like, I had ideas in school, but, I never could really execute on them because, I needed to continue in education,
Right.
or like I'm giving up so much stuff right now, where you guys just offer so many things. And like you said, that value is key, that I haven't seen in the VC world. And I read up on business, and I have friends who've started startups. I even had a
Totally.
couple in the past. And, that essence of having that support team is so key. Let's shift gears a little bit here from the venture capital side of what you do into, I've seen this line of creative work, like stem through your path of like where you dealt art through art galleries, and now you have this honey house on TikTok
Funny else, yeah.
where you're an executive producer at, and you guys just crossed the line of 1 million followers. So huge congrats on that. How does that sort of tie
Thank you.
into play?
So I think, it's really for me, my enthusiasm for trying new things. And the Honey House was an idea that was started by friends of mine, JT Barnett and Nick Dio. JT Barnett is a former pro athlete and incredible marketer, and brand builder. Nick Dio is a founder of a lifestyle brand and co-founder, and he's also a big calls himself a dot connector, but head of new business and working on the talent team at VaynerMedia. And so we felt as adults that it would be a project where it wouldn't be your typical TikTok house of a bunch of young people dancing or creating dramatic content, but we could put together a house full of couples and create wholesome wellness, fitness, family-friendly, brand-driven content, and really differentiate ourselves in the space. So, I got to be involved in some of the early ideation and was just really keen on supporting the Honey House team, and got involved as an executive producer in this second season, and now the third that's upcoming. Man, it's been a great case study and learning experience, and it's been so fun to build that out as a media property. And so we've done it sort of season by season, where season 1 was 30 days, in a house with an initial cast, and then season 2 has been a new cast, and another 30 days, both in Los Angeles, and now we're looking at doing a new 30-day season 3 in Miami, from January 18th to March 4th. And then we're thinking about Austin in the spring. We're thinking about the Hamptons in the summer. But, we've turned down a handful of reality TV show offers. And I think it's been interesting to work with, brands on creating TikTok content, and certainly build out our own sort of categories, and figure out our niche, from the challenges we do, to I think our biggest sort of theme has been our hopscotch videos, creating dances and looking at working with recording artists and record labels to also share their music through our TikToks and create visibility has been, there have been a handful of interesting conversations. So it's fun to work in a new space that's growing, and figure out how to offer value to as many people as possible.
And let's just highlight for a second, for those who have never seen a Honey House TikTok video, like, this is well produced content that people are watching that feels like it's happening authentically, I guess is a great way to put it. In my opinion, like sitting there scrolling and watching it, you're like, wow, I could watch this hopscotch dance video on loop. You're just like in awe. You're
Yeah.
like, how did four of them figure out how to do that? Like, it had to take so much time and work, and it looks so effortless.
Yeah, well,
But it,
I mean, that's really generous and kind of you. I think it's also, credit to Nick Dio and who's a big agency guy and has produced a lot of amazing content throughout his career as a professional in the space, working with huge brands and doing large campaigns and certainly JT, who's an amazing sort of brand builder and marketer himself. So understanding how to produce content and working with content creators who have agency experience really lended itself to thinking really sort of practically about how to build specific content series within the Honey House umbrella, and then just working with good humans and bringing in people who are enthusiastic about trying new things and that are great to work with. And shout out to the Honey House team and for them for putting together an amazing cast and really finding their groove in terms of that content. And I think it's really cool to see the way that people engage, but also just now working on a lot of product placements and where the media property can go itself is sort of exponential. And doing it with couples has also been fun because I think that TikTok really responds well to wholesome content. And there's a genuine effort, not to have calculated authenticity, but to create fun content that really can find its way into any environment, and be digestible and be brandable and be healthy content. So I think that's really the lens that the team took in terms of differentiating ourselves on TikTok.
and let's talk for a second, like the casting behind it in these different cities. So do these couples already live in the city and then you guys just have like a
No,
set
I mean,
house,
I mean
or are you
not at all.
flying people in, or like these people would be great on here, they look like they're fun, they have the content creation experience? What's
Right.
that look like?
I mean, so season one was started out with friends, you know, getting friends involved who build content, but it was sort of open ended. Um, we just wanted to find some people that were hungry enough to take a chance on the project, and shout out to Nick and Aaron for driving across the country from New Jersey to LA. And so people are coming in from everywhere. I think certainly if we do season 3 in Miami, everyone I think is going to be flying in. I don't know if we're going to cast any Miami locals, but I think now that we're at season 3, we do have a couple benchmarks we're looking for. We're looking for a diverse cast. We're looking for people who at least have 100,000 followers across their social channels, and trying to have some level of benchmark. But it's also, we've talked to former and current pro athletes or other types of, I think, individuals, but it's more about like, do you already create content? Like, is content creation something you're doing full time and you're passionate about, and really finding content creators rather than maybe influencers who have influence for other reasons. So I think that's been a conversation we've had, just in the last week even. So I think that's something we're looking at. But when we go to a new season, we look for a new house. We've been lucky to work with some individuals who are, open to hosting us.
Mhm.
But season one was an Airbnb, and negotiating with the owner and trying to find the right place. So it's been an interesting progression for sure.
And it's interesting that you mentioned content creators versus influencers, because there is a huge difference in that, in an aspect, because you can just be an influencer for XYZ reason in specific categories, whether it's fashion or lifestyle or
Right.
sports. But having that aspect of content creation where you know what's going to succeed on a platform and what is authentic to a platform.
Or if you already know what's authentic to you, and you've already been communicating and creating content for your followers. So I think sports is probably a good example where rather than fashion or anything else, because I think generally whether you're modeling or you're in the fashion space, it's you are a content creator. But I think sports is an interesting category to look at, where it's like um, not every pro athlete that becomes an influencer because they're creating content, but because they're good at what they do. So I think that's also interesting to look at. So there's totally a difference between I think being an influencer and being a content creator. So um, it's a it's a conversation we're having for sure.
Yeah, I can tell because it's this space, and being in the marketing world, you want to, when you do those brand product placements, you want something that looks natural in a photo, whether it's like I have a cup of coffee that says Starbucks on the outside of the
Sure.
cup, or, if I've got a huge banner in the background of me that just says like, Bobby, you've never placed any of those vinyl signs in any of your coffee shows before.
Right. Well, I think
And
we don't mind so much, I think, the product placement of like influencing, but I think it's more like, are you putting yourself in front of a camera every day? You know? So there are certainly people across the board who are great influencers creating amazing content, but um yeah, it's fun. So I think we're also open to anything. We're sort of, as much as we try to be practical, we're still happy-go-lucky, creatives who want to work with people who have a great attitude and share our enthusiasm.
And that is such a building block aspect of it, because when you get a bunch of creatives in the room, ideas just start flowing
Right.
that, you wouldn't have thought of, I wouldn't have thought of, but you bring somebody else in and then you just build off of it. And that enthusiasm just grows. And if you're got the cameras out every day and you're creating something, you never know what's going to come out of it.
Totally. So I think as much as um, the content looks sort of really specific, I think there's a lot of brainstorming that the team does that totally lends itself to needing that creative juice from everyone.
And that is also a note to say, platforms change and
Mm.
platforms grow. And we've all seen the evolution from, what Facebook used to be and what it is today, and what Instagram used to be and where it's at now. And everybody thought TikTok and Musically were like
Mm.
one of these things that, oh, it's only for kids, it's only lip syncing videos.
Right.
And now we're at this new level of content creation on it
Totally.
where it's incredible, and the space is just going to continue to grow.
Totally. Yeah. I think the space is going to continue to grow. I think video content is so important, just because people really can develop a relationship with you face to face that the brain doesn't necessarily yet differentiate between video and face sort of connecting versus like face to face connecting. So I think there's still a really unique way to build relationships there. Just as much as like new audio platforms like how we met on Clubhouse are becoming an interesting like audio driven way to build relationships. So I think the stickiness behind TikTok and the stickiness behind Clubhouse are really interesting sort of case studies to look at for how, you know, social media is going to evolve and what platforms will come about and how they'll evolve.
Let's talk about Clubhouse for a second, because there are a bunch of people out there who are like, Clubhouse, I have never heard of Clubhouse.
Right.
What is Clubhouse? I just saw on Twitter the other night where people were trying to sell their invites that they have. So it's like this new skewed world of like, how do I get in on this app that's in beta, who's slowly opening up waitlists? You want to dive into a little bit more of this audio platform and what you've seen on it for people who have never even heard of it before?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an audio, you know, sort of chat room driven platform where you know, users can start clubs and start chat rooms that are specifically audio based only. And so I think the structure is quite simple, where, you know, if you start a room, you're the moderator and you can invite people from the audience up onto this virtual stage to speak and answer questions and have a dialogue, and you know, audience members can raise their hand and be called up on stage, or you know, it's a really interesting tool to network and discuss ideas. And I think because it's so new, there's a lot of enthusiasm for connecting with other people and networking early on. But it was, you know, it started by two guys who come from the venture capital community. It's really, you know, backed by Andreessen Horowitz, and it's interesting, you know, how they sort of jumped into it as a big case study. And I think that's really what Clubhouse is. It's this social experiment where, you know, I think it's Paul Rohan have been able to raise $10 million at a 100 million post money valuation and catch the attention of a lot of the VC and the tech and the entrepreneurial and even the entertainment sort of community. And now you have a lot of celebrities on the app. You have a lot of artists on the app, a lot of big VCs and tech entrepreneurs, as well as I was in a room with Andrew Yang, you know, a couple nights ago, and got to pitch him on Mental Health Global Network because he's spent a lot of his campaign trail talking about mental health. And, you know, I think having him check out one of our companies and you know, access to information and access to people is so important. So I think that in itself has been like a unique experience, to also watch friends become really strong moderators as well, and learn myself how to better moderate discussions has been insightful. But I think you know, there were two things that really gave, I think, Clubhouse their tipping point in terms of, you know, jumping into such a large raise from day one and the valuation they got. And one was that for every one person that joins Clubhouse, they invite at least 10 people. And then two, you know, the amount of time people were spending in the app per session and then spending multiple sessions a day, I think was also really compelling. So it's been a great experiment for me, and I'm definitely spending too much time on Clubhouse, but it's a great place to engage with other people.
And it's interesting that you said, like, you were in a room on Clubhouse with Andrew Yang and able to pitch him. Now let's take this out.
Well, I think pitch is a generous word. I mean, able to
talk about it.
Get my, you know, 15 seconds of saying what's up, and, you know,
right.
It was his welcome room on Clubhouse. So when people join Clubhouse, anyone can have a welcome room, and people jump in and talk to them about the platform. And so it was funny because my original suggestion was actually on like moderating that welcome room
Okay.
better, where it was like getting out of hand and people were just chiming in. And a lot of strong moderation has come from like allowing people up on stage and then prioritizing them from the top down, and giving people sort of their piece for 30 seconds or a minute. So but because I think that was it became too difficult. But I also think that it was an example of like Andrew Yang also spending more time than he thought he would on Clubhouse, even in his first session. So I thought that was interesting, in terms of, our desire to be helpful and answer questions and
And
speak.
even connects with people,
Yeah.
In a general way of saying it, like we've lost a lot of connection. Like we've been
Totally.
able to connect with people on Zoom, but this remote life of, you might be in an apartment by yourself, but not with family, and not having
Right.
that day-to-day interaction, besides maybe a quick Zoom check-in with a
Right.
colleague. Like you crave this connection. And it's interesting that Clubhouse came out at this time where the world sort of wanted connection and
Yeah.
wanted this aspect of like, I can put Andrew Yang in a room with Ryan and so many other things, where if you wanted to have this meeting in real life, it would probably be super difficult
Yeah. Yeah.
to get on like
I
to
don't think
Andrew
there's
Yang
I don't think there's
calendar.
ever going to be a time where Andrew Yang and I are in the same room, but I can't say that for sure. But I think it is interesting about, interpersonal connection is such a diminishing, sort of asset, or just, even the opportunity for interpersonal connection now is so diminished. Um, appropriately so, given the effort to be safe. But I think it's interesting on Clubhouse, because I've been able to now have so many new interpersonal relationships develop, whether it's you and I or other people on Clubhouse, that I've had like 4 or 5 Zoom meetings with people from Clubhouse, whether they're entrepreneurs pitching me, or VCs I'm pitching on collaborating with, or just people who want to talk about mental health. So it's been awesome to have a platform to have access to relationship building during this time. So couldn't have been better timing for Clubhouse.
Oh, definitely. And it's a way for like everybody to meet a new subset of people that probably wouldn't have happened on LinkedIn unless you were
Right.
doing like super specific searches, or even in the internet realm of like, how in the world am I going to find this person?
Well, I think
need
it's
to meet?
when I like that sort of last tangent about like finding someone. It's like, I think there's a bit of trust on Clubhouse, that it's like, oh, this is a real person. I'm talking to them now. I can totally make the connection and reach out. So it doesn't feel as cold of an outreach when you do DM someone. I'm curious how many people are you reaching out to do interviews, and are you finding that Clubhouse is a great platform for that?
So actually, I'm going to say this, we met on Instagram. So I'm still on the wait list for Clubhouse and waiting that invite. But I'm super excited to check it out and see all the different things that come from it. And just from a networking standpoint in general, since I started the show into September, I mean, people want that connection and they
Totally.
want to connect with somebody, and to have the opportunity to share their story and given the space to do that, where we can all connect and learn something and add value to each other. It's been one where like I've had numerous people ask like, oh, can I be on, or what's your story? And like sift through it to find out like, I would have never thought into September to where I'm at today here at the end of December where I'm already booking out January and
Yeah,
February.
you're booked up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and which is incredible when you think about it. Like, I had thought of this idea a couple of years ago, not to do it on Zoom, but it was like to do, I loved going to coffee shops and meeting people.
Mm,
But it was always like, oh, I want to hear somebody's story. I wonder if I could like take video of the conversation, but then people get scared of video, or at least
mm,
they did at the time. It was like, oh, you're going to record a conversation. So then I would like transition it into like the people I met in a caption on Instagram. And
mm.
then I would just sort of like let it go. I just continue to hear people's story and share as it happens. But now it's like completely evolved to a space of everybody wants that connection.
Mm.
And this is the new way to do it.
Yeah, I think it's all evolving, and I think people are getting more and more, um, I think hungry for connection. So that's been really cool to see.
Definitely. And as we begin to wrap up here, Ryan, what's been one of the biggest blessings for you this year?
Mm. I mean, it's definitely got to be like spending time with family. I think it's I've been lucky to be able to be home, and I left New York City early enough where I felt safe, um, returning back to my family. But my father's an entrepreneur, and he's lived in London the last 20 years, and so my parents are together, but commuting to work, and so
Mm.
um, having him uh, sort of back for almost 5 months at the beginning of the quarantine. Now he's had to travel and come back, but being able to spend like a really significant amount of time with him has been really just a blessing, and getting to spend time with my siblings. I'm the oldest of five, so typically we're all over the place, and being in one place has really given us an opportunity to just be closer. So, I think it's that has to be by far and away the biggest blessing in my life. So I feel grateful to have a family. I feel grateful to have the opportunity to be here and be safe with them. Um, that in itself is amazing.
It's incredible coming from, like being on the road 100% of the time
Totally.
previously to spending almost the entire year with in Texas and here in Indiana with family. There are trying times when you get everybody in the same house and in the same room. But overall, I can totally relate. Like, had this been a normal year, none of this would have ever happened. Of
Yeah.
just like spending time together and cooking together, or hearing somebody's ideas, or playing soccer in the backyard, all sorts of things that we've had
Yeah.
the chance to experience wouldn't have been there.
Yeah. And yeah, totally. Um, and certainly a lot of board games and hanging out. So it's been good to see the dogs, and I think it's just being able to do this has been great. So we otherwise wouldn't have been able to spend time together like this as a family for who knows, maybe ever. So
Right.
um, that is really cool.
Wonderful. Ryan, where can people find out more about you, social networks, handles, website?
Yeah, I would love to connect with any entrepreneurs. We have an intake form on our shiftventures.io website, and you can find me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect, as well as Instagram at Ryan G Foss. I'd love to find a way to be helpful to anyone and everyone who reaches out.
Wonderful. And I will also put the links in the show notes, as well as
Cool.
wherever you are watching this feed at, you can find all of Ryan's information. And the website for Shift Ventures to connect even more. Ryan, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you today. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Bobbi. It's been great. It's a great day to start. It's a great opportunity just to start the day and to chat with you and participate, you know. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. For everybody who's watching, I hope you have an incredible day today. Just enjoy it to the fullest, and I encourage you to do something new today. So this has been today's episode of Coffee with Bobbi with Ryan. Take care.